Some of the most exhausted people in the world look completely successful on the outside. They're productive, they're disciplined, they show up early, stay late, and get things done. From the outside, everything looks like it's working, but internally, they are running on empty. And the most dangerous part of all is this: most high performers don't recognize burnout until their body steps in and forces them to stop. Today, we're going to talk about why that happens, what's actually going on inside the body of someone who is burning out, and what the evidence says about building a kind of success that is genuinely sustainable. Before we get into the biology, we need to address a misconception, because the way most people think about burnout is wrong, and that misunderstanding is part of why it goes unaddressed for so long. Most people associate burnout with laziness, with weakness, with someone who simply couldn't handle the pressure. If you push through, if you stay disciplined, if you want it badly enough, the common belief is that burnout won't happen to you. But burnout is not a motivation problem. It is a recovery problem. The World Health Organization officially classifies burnout as an occupational syndrome, one characterized by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. It is a physiological and psychological state, not a character flaw. And in high performers, it is especially easy to miss because achievement can temporarily mask dysfunction. You can be hitting every target, delivering on every commitment, and still be moving steadily toward a biological breaking point. Here is a pattern that repeats itself constantly in high-achieving people, across industries and age groups. High performers are often rewarded by their careers, by their peers, and by the culture around them for ignoring the signals their body sends. Pushing through fatigue becomes a point of pride. Sleeping less is reframed as dedication. Exhaustion gets relabeled as discipline. And the more that behavior is rewarded with results, the more deeply it becomes embedded as an identity. Over time, the nervous system adapts to a constant state of pressure. Stress stops feeling like stress and starts feeling like normal. This is a real physiological phenomenon. Your baseline shifts, and what used to feel like overload now just feels like Tuesday. But the human body is not designed to operate under chronic, unrelenting stress. It is designed to respond to stress in short bursts, what scientists call the fight-or-flight response, and then return to a state of rest and recovery. That recovery phase is not a luxury. It is when the body repairs itself. It is when the brain consolidates learning. It is when the hormonal system resets. When recovery is consistently removed from the equation, the stress response never fully resolves. And that is where the system begins, slowly and quietly, to break down. Let's talk about what is actually happening inside the body when burnout develops, because this is not abstract, it is measurable biology. At the center of the stress response is a hormone called cortisol. When you face a challenge, a deadline, a difficult conversation, a demanding workout, your adrenal glands release cortisol. It sharpens your focus, raises your blood sugar for quick energy, and temporarily suppresses non-essential functions like digestion and immune response. In short bursts, this is exactly what it's supposed to do. But here is what happens when that response never switches off. In the early stages of chronic stress, elevated cortisol can actually feel like a performance boost. You feel alert, driven, almost wired. Many high performers describe this phase as being in the zone, and they pursue it deliberately. But sustained cortisol elevation takes a serious toll. Research published in the journal Psychoneuroendocrinology has documented that chronic cortisol elevation disrupts sleep architecture, reducing the deep, restorative stages of sleep the brain and body depend on. It increases systemic inflammation, which is a known driver of cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, and accelerated aging. It impairs the hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation, reducing cognitive clarity and emotional resilience over time. Eventually, after prolonged activation, the HPA axis, the hormonal system that governs the stress response, begins to dysregulate. The body has not given up. It has run out of reserves. And this is the part that most conversations about burnout leave out entirely. Burnout doesn't always look like collapse. It doesn't always look like someone who can't get out of bed or has stopped functioning. In fact, for many high performers, it looks like something far more subtle and far harder to identify. It looks like showing up every day, completing your tasks, meeting your obligations, answering your messages.
Being present in the room, but feeling emotionally disconnected from all of it. There is a term in the clinical literature for this state: depersonalization, a sense of going through the motions without genuine engagement, of watching your own life from a slight distance. It is one of the 3 core diagnostic features of burnout, alongside emotional exhaustion and reduced sense of personal accomplishment, as defined in the research of Dr. Christina Maslach, whose burnout inventory has been the gold standard in this field for decades. This version of burnout is particularly dangerous for high performers because it is invisible to everyone around them, and often to themselves. They are still producing, still achieving. The metrics still look fine, but the internal experience has fundamentally changed. If you have ever found yourself completing tasks you used to find meaningful and feeling almost nothing while doing them, that is not a personality change. That is a physiological signal.
High performers face a specific neurological vulnerability that most people don't consider, and it has to do with the dopamine system. Modern productivity culture runs on stimulation. More goals, more metrics, more feedback, more output. The dopamine system, which drives motivation, focus, and the pursuit of reward, is constantly activated in high-achieving environments. And initially, this feels like a strength. You are motivated. You are driven. The next goal pulls you forward. But chronic dopamine overstimulation leads to receptor downregulation. The brain adapts by becoming less responsive to the very signals that once drove performance. And when that happens, the high performer faces a troubling paradox. They need to do more to feel the same level of engagement. But doing more is precisely what's deepening the depletion. Researchers studying workplace performance have found that sustained high-demand environments without adequate recovery lead to measurable declines in cognitive flexibility, creative thinking, and decision-making quality, the exact capacities that high performance depends on. You can maintain output for a period of time through sheer effort, but the quality of the thinking behind it deteriorates in ways that are real, even if not immediately visible. The irony is sharp. The relentless pursuit of high performance, without recovery built in, reliably undermines the very performance it is chasing. There is a deeper layer underneath the biology, and it is one that makes burnout particularly difficult to address in people who are achievement-oriented. For many high performers, productivity is not just something they do, it is something they are. Their sense of worth, their self-image, their confidence, their place in the world is built, at least in part, on their output. Which means that rest doesn't just feel unproductive, it feels threatening. Slowing down creates anxiety, not relief. Taking a day off generates guilt rather than restoration. This is not a personal failing. It is a predictable outcome of environments, professional, academic, and cultural, that consistently reward output and penalize rest. When the message you receive, year after year, is that your value is measured by what you produce, it reshapes how you see yourself. But here is what the research is unambiguous about. Self-worth tied to performance is one of the strongest predictors of burnout. A study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology found that individuals with high contingent self-worth, meaning their self-esteem fluctuated based on their performance, showed significantly higher rates of emotional exhaustion and burnout symptoms than those with more stable internal self-worth. You cannot sustainably perform at a high level from a place of depletion. The foundation of durable, long-term achievement is not more effort. It is a stable, recovered nervous system that is capable of generating genuine effort, repeatedly over time. Your worth is not your output, and no amount of achievement will create the recovery your body requires. What does sustainable high performance actually look like? It starts with a fundamental shift in how you think about recovery. Recovery is not the reward you get after performing well. It is the biological requirement that makes performing well possible in the first place. Protect your sleep above everything else. Sleep is when cortisol resets, when the brain clears metabolic waste through the lymphatic system, and when emotional processing occurs. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep is not a preference. It is a biological requirement for sustained cognitive performance. Consistently trading sleep for productivity is trading long-term capacity for short-term output. Reduce unnecessary stimulation. Not all input is useful. Audit what is demanding your attention and ask honestly whether it is serving your actual goals or simply filling space. Creating periods of genuine mental quiet each day, even 20 to 30 minutes, begins to restore the neurological baseline that chronic stimulation erodes. Train your body, but respect recovery. Physical exercise is one of the most powerful tools available for stress regulation, emotional resilience, and cognitive function. But overtraining without adequate rest compounds physiological stress rather than relieving it. Intensity must be balanced with recovery. Set boundaries as a performance strategy. Saying no to low-value demands is not weakness. It is resource management. Every boundary you set around your time and attention is an investment in the quality of what you choose to spend that time and attention on. These are not soft suggestions. They are evidence-based performance strategies, and the research behind them is consistent and clear. Burnout does not happen because you are weak. It does not happen because you lack discipline or drive. It happens because the human nervous system has real, biological limits. And when those limits are consistently overridden, when the recovery that the body requires is treated as optional, the body begins collecting what it is owed. Not all at once. Quietly. Over time. Sustainable success is not built on the capacity to push through everything. It is built on the wisdom to know when to recover, so that when you do push, you are doing it from a full tank, not an empty one. That is not a compromise on ambition. That is what ambition, done right, actually looks like.